Before returning to academia, Sunand was the global learning strategist for Autodesk, leading its Learning Futures team. He is a recipient of the Innovative Excellence in Teaching, Learning and Technology Award from the International Conference on College Teaching and Learning. Today, he will be talking about the future of learning and making, trends affecting design related education. Over to you, Sunand.
Thank you, Sambit. Let me just get the screen going. What do you see? Do you see the presentation screen or the other one?
I see the entire your PPT screen right now. It's not in the presentation mode yet.
Now
Yeah.
it should be
Yeah.
the presentation.
Yes.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this is your second day or third day? What is it? First day. Wow. Okay. So I'm the privileged one. So good morning, everybody. I'm Sunand Bhattacharya, as Sambit said, introduced me. I am located in Boston, and it's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. And I'll be taking you through a fairly long, quick but long journey. We'll start broad and then get down to certain specifics. Okay. Is the audio okay? Everything is okay? Something wonderful. So as somebody introduced me, I joined Boston College about 3 years ago. And prior to that, I was with Autodesk. And I've had several other positions where I kind of evolved from being a product designer, getting into human factors, engineering, ergonomics, and then getting into academia. I was a professor a long time ago, but then I moved to to industry, and now I'm back in academia. So I'm going to talk about of several things. Since this is your first day and you are entering students, I'll talk about design. And I look at design in two different ways. The big D, the capital D, that you see on the left side, which is the noun, if you look at grammar, the profession. And that means industrial design, product design, graphic design, fashion design, even instructional design. A lot of the things that all of you are studying, you're going to become a designer, and that's your profession. But I'm going to be dealing today with the little d, that's on the right side. It's the verb, the process, and the democratization of this process, which means this process is now becoming something that many other professions are adopting. So in the old days, in my time, design and design process was kind of the domain of design and engineering. But today you see medicine using design thinking. You see business schools talking about design thinking. And you can see this whole thing spreading like wildfire. In fact, much more than the design profession itself has done to embrace it. So we'll talk about the process. But to understand any process in terms of in the future context, and part of my work at Autodesk was being a futurist, meaning trying to look at trends and then determine what strategies the corporation should be having worldwide. So when we look at trends and indicators, there are several things that are happening. All of you are brand new students. You'll be going through a different vocabulary, a vocabulary that's changed from my time again quite a bit. You know, there's human-centered design, there's empathy, there's participatory design, there are design hackathons, design thinking, design swarms. So you'll be coming across all these different terminologies over time. That is a very fast-growing trend that's happening. The other part of it is if you look at history, if you look at pre-20th century, what happened at that time, it was more the craftsman apprenticeship model. And it was actually kind of in Hindi, the guru, shishya, or chela equation over there. Through time, to the early 1900s, 1950s, the do-it-yourself came about. America and Europe after World War II were beginning to build themselves. And a lot of people got empowered with tools, hand tools. And then that made it the do-it-yourself entrepreneurs that you have today. You can today go to a department store like Walmart or Lowe's or Home Depot and buy your tools. And in fact, you have now IKEA in India. So the knockdown kind of furniture that you bring in, you assemble it today. That's kind of a do-it-yourself. But the most important one that's happening, which is your lives right now, is the maker community. And when you look at that, the current trend is makers, a lot of students, school students are from an early age getting empowered with technology. You have your cell phone, you have Minecraft games, and there are all kinds of other technologies that are coming out, 3D printers, etc. So people are getting exposed to those things, and the mindset is changing. And then in the future, your generation, the post-pandemic generation, in fact, is wanting to solve problems in the world. So when you look at that, socially relevant innovation, that's happening also all over the place. So I'll actually let's ask ourselves a couple of questions over here. First of all, are changes in design education optional, or are these changes a necessity? And to better understand that why, we have to look at the who. So anything you design in life, you'll be looking at who is the end user, and how it's affecting them. What are the unintentional or intentional consequences that are there? A good designer needs to look at all these things moving forward. So the who and the mindset of the who. So when you look at that, let's take a look at this in the center. In my time, we were on the sidelines where the educator is right now, as you see. And the educator, our guru, our professors, they were in the center. And we did not have all this thing going on over here, which is your mindset. So as you, as Generation Z, come in, your ways of thinking, the method in which you process things, the way you collaborate is quite different. It is very different. And it's an important piece to remember, because when you start designing solutions, you'll be designing it for this mindset. You know, my time is kind of passing by and going to be gone pretty soon. So let me start with a story. This is Jacob Sperry. Jacob Sperry has a condition called ADHD, attention deficit. It's not a disorder, it's just neurodivergent. But Jacob needs something to fidget with. You know, हाथ में कुछ पकड़ना पड़ता है उसको. So at a very early age, Jacob started trying to use technology and hand tools to create a solution. And he worked and worked and worked. He used Autodesk software, you know, Tinkercad, etc., tried to create something, use 3D printers and create prototypes. And his father, being an engineer, also helped him. And the school, this alternative school called New View Studio that's in Cambridge, Massachusetts, they helped also. Long story short, Jacob came up with something called GY rings. And it's also called fidget widget. So he can hold it in his hand. So let's say he's in a class going through a lecture, he can play with that and not get distracted. That helps him focus. So Jacob, as a young innovator, came up with an idea and made this. But he didn't stop there. And that's an important piece to remember. Jacob went one step further. Jacob went and, with his father's help and other people's help, he created a website. He raised some money for creating a little company. And he also created packaging and then got this whole thing manufactured somewhere in China. Long story short, if you fast forward, today, Jacob is, I think, 19 years old. This was when he started, he was about 13 or 14 years old, 5 years later. Jacob's at Worcester Polytechnic studying engineering, but he's also an entrepreneur. He's the CEO of his company. The point being, it's a very different world. This person did not stop in just creating an end product. This person went 2 steps forward. And that is your world. This is your target audience. This young girl is going to be part of your world. And this person is coming in with a lot more knowledge than what I did. You know, we barely knew what design was when we went to design school. And we had professors like Panchal and all who actually shared with us their viewpoints. And this is happening not only in America, this is happening all over the world. This is happening, for example, in India. This is a place in Kuppam, right outside Bangalore. Agastya International Foundation is the world's largest. Those of you who didn't know about it, they're the world's largest in bringing science to the underserved. And in America, you know, we from Wellesley, Olin College, and Babson, have been bringing students to India to work over here to see how these students learn and create all these apparati that's kind of located out here to study physics, science, biology. All these things fit into a suitcase, and the teacher goes on a motorcycle from village to village teaching them. It's one of the best examples of mobile learning, and that's happening in your backyard. So, and these are all Generation Z, perhaps a different level of, different outlook, but they are your colleagues, our audience. They have reached 12 million children and 250,000 teachers. A great, great story. High school students are creating things like what I did when I was in college, new kinds of wheelchairs. So this is Muhammad from Afghanistan. This is Kate, who's now at RISD and Brown. And when you look at things happening in Africa, for example, this is Leroy. Leroy is part of an organization that I'm part of called Global Minimum. When he was in school, he created a method to take all the kitchen human waste and make it into a bioreactor for cooking gas, and worked out a method that led to he and his friends creating a company. And that company has today grown. So Leroy is now an entrepreneur. So you notice design for need, for your own, for fulfilling a need, and entrepreneurship. And Leroy's story has gone viral. It was on CNN. Sanjay Gupta featured it a few years ago. My point being, again, that is your audience. This is you. This is not us. This is you. This is how you think. And this is your opportunity in college to be able to take the tools and do something meaningful. Generation Z thinks differently. We did a research project with Illinois Institute of Technology. And I don't know, many of you know, this particular program is chaired by another NID graduate from India, from Ahmedabad, Vijay Kumar. Vijay Kumar has written the book called 101 Design Methods. So his students, I had commissioned his students when I was at Autodesk to do a research in terms of how people will be thinking and working in the future. And Generation Z has some very specific needs and attitudes. They say that, you say actually, not they. You want to have your access to your tool sets at all times. Generation Z is perhaps not very patient in the sense, if they don't get their solutions, they'll move on. So there's, even in software, within 10 minutes, if you can't master that and work with that without reading the manual, people move on. So those are the kinds of research that we've been doing, but this is what they want to be part of. And then when you look at, in my time, you had to become an engineer. Our parents wouldn't hear of anybody becoming an artist or a designer. They didn't even know what that was, or a scientist. But today, what's happening is the boundaries are getting blurred. You're not just an engineer. You're not just an artist. You're not just a designer. You're all of the above, or your team is all of the above. That multidisciplinary team is very important to kind of pay attention to. So the classroom of the future, I'm actually working on a project right now at Boston College where we're creating this whole new building that the CMO of Apple is funding. And the classroom of the future may consist of somebody from business, somebody who's an entrepreneur, somebody from engineering, somebody from design, somebody from philosophy, somebody from theology, somebody from sociology, working together to solve a multidisciplinary problem. That is the wave of the future. It is not just the specialization that the tunnel vision specialization that one focuses on. Do you need all those tools? Yes, you do. But what you also need to remember that there are other players who are solving the problem, and you're looking at how problems are solved. Another area, another trend is technological advancement. So when you look at that, in my day, there was the lathe, there was the shaping machine, there was the milling machine. Those are the kinds of equipment and machines and technology that we used, especially in the mechanical engineering area. Today, it's this, what you see over here. There's VR, there's virtual reality, there's augmented reality, there's Internet of Things, there's robotics, there are drones, there's machine learning, there's generative design, all these things that are going on. And that has also paved the way for a very different kind of thinking. Here's another example over here. This is a 57-story building that has been built in 19 days. Now, people may come and be critical about it that, it'll not last, it'll fall, it will not sustain, it's not sustainable for earthquakes, etc. How much energy is it taking? This particular group had social scientists looking at how people live. It looked at, oh shoot, what happened? Hang on, this is on my end, I think. Anyway, while that's coming up, I've been having some problems with my Mac. So while that is coming up, I will just say that they got a team that was totally multidisciplinary in nature. Sambit, do you see my screen now?
Not yet.
Okay. Nothing?
No.
Let me. My apologies about that. Take a minute. I have to get a new Mac.
Yes, no, I can see it now.
Okay, so I'll just rush to that, get to that screen there. So my point is that particular building is a result of multiple disciplines working together, a very refined project management piece. This was done in China to create what they have created. So moving forward, here's an experiment that Autodesk was doing for Airbus. When you look at materials, material science, and how things are being built today, that's going to change as well. So let's say you're a product designer working with a material scientist and pushing the boundaries of the technology. You can come up with various different things that are perhaps using less material, that are efficient, and that are stronger in this case, structurally. So generative design is one thing that when I was at Autodesk that was being researched on, which uses machine learning. In this case, this was a software that was being designed that kind of learns as you interact with it. You provide the variables, and then it comes up with solutions. So you can put in the variables for strength, variables for stresses coming in, variables for amount of materials to be used, and all those things, and it can spit out thoughts and ideas. So to test that, at Autodesk, we put sensors on the chassis of a car. Many sensors, I've forgotten the count right now. And then that car was driven through the Mojave Desert. And as it was driven through, ditches and different terrains, the sensors kept providing data. That data was used to translate in terms of what kind of stresses and strains would be coming on the chassis of the car, to come up with various different solutions. So the machine, the software actually developed this whole solution. And you can see you don't need that much material. We were actually putting a lot more material in it. And then that kind of got refined, and the software keeps learning. That's where artificial intelligence comes in, machine learning comes in. It's learning, basically. And finally, it came up with this idea. So at the Autodesk Research Labs, a lot of work that Tesla did, before their first car came out, some of these kinds of considerations were taken for this, as well as for sustainability, etc. So this chassis is actually, this is a concept using, much less material. It's stronger, and it can is safer also in terms of sustaining impact, etc. So that was one story over there. Here's another story in terms of how another emerging trend is the design-related things that are happening in public. In my time, we were taught to take the requirements of the client. So let's say you're working with Philips or Bajaj or somebody, they tell you need to create the next best iron that has to sell, and you work for that corporation. This is the left side diagram, and you come up with that solution. And basically, your client is that particular, your employer. But it took us a long time to. So today, you can actually use 3D printers and take that solution, actually look at it, that is that the right thing to do for the environment? Is that the right thing to do for the consumer? Are there accidents that are going to happen because the designer did not take into account some of the misuses, etc.? So you can actually test those things out. You get time. In my time, that was not quite possible. So you can look at it this way. So today, when you go to the maker labs, I think Mumbai has one. I'm not sure if Ahmedabad has one, but people are using 3D printers. People are using Fusion 360, Tinkercad, SketchUp to create objects. Now, a lot of rubbish is also coming out just because people can use 3D printers. A lot of crap comes out also, but that's going to change. How can you design meaningfully is the important piece. Here's another very important diagram, amazing complexity. My time, it was kind of a one-to-one, very linear progression on the left side. Your time, you as students coming up, you're actually your mind, and that's why Generation Z, that mind, that learning universe I was showing you, it's used to balancing many things together. Whereas if you look at my age group, we kind of solve one problem and move on to the next one, but not the simultaneous balancing of things. This is kind of getting into systems thinking and how you look at multiple variables and come up with a solution. Actually, in some ways, your lives will be complicated, but you are equipped to solve it and solve it better than what we did. Okay, so next is COVID brought us here. So this was a slide I created several years ago when we were releasing Fusion 360 for the first time in 2014. And I had these things in my PowerPoint, and then COVID actually made this happen. So today we are on Zoom. We are all collaborating right now. I can see Sambit can see me, you all can see me. Your phone can solve also a lot of problems. Cloud-based solutions, working on your phone. You're sitting in Singapore versus America and you're solving problems. So that's called radical collaboration, and radical collaboration by design for the future of making and learning. How we can collaborate, how all of us, you can be in India, I can be here, and we can together design perhaps the next whatever product or object or problem you're trying to solve together. So architectural spaces are also changing. For example, this is Virginia Tech. And what they did was they moved away actually from individual classrooms and created this large space. Now, some design schools already have this, but many went towards creating, first year, second year, third year, studios, rather than everybody working together. Actually, I was fortunate enough to be in a design school in which it was all open. So that's what's happening right now. And that's, again, a struggle because I'm working with architects over at Boston College. And for me to convince my leadership that we need to move this way is still difficult. Cloud-based technology. So all of us work with Google Sheets and Google Docs and slides. And in all those cases, four of us can be writing together or creating a Google slide presentation together or working on a spreadsheet together at the same time. Well, new software, design software like Fusion 360 or Onshape, that's another one by PTC that's come out, which allows people to work simultaneously and co-create. And that's what it's all about. It's all about collaborating, co-creating, including everyone to create a solution. A very different world again. I keep going back to this very different world because at the end of the day, you are living in an environment, your future is going to be different. And some of the things that you get from, older professors and all like us is still our perspective as a result of what we went through. So it's up to you how you think about these things. Thinking is very important. When you look at my time, it was all analog. We sketched, shit, this thing. Okay, let me try this again. I have to call tech support tomorrow to get a new Mac. Okay, let's give it a whirl again. I apologize for this whole thing happening. I thought this was going to happen. Okay. Are you there? Can you
Yes.
see?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. And we are okay on time.
Yeah. Uh, it's not on the presentation mode right now. Yes, it is now.
Now it should be.
Yeah, yeah.
So so today's world is we are all striving towards this red line. So in my time, it was sketching cardboard models, wood models, and high fidelity models when I was doing product design. Then came, I think, Samvit's time when they were alternating between sketching and Sketchbook Pro or AutoCAD, etc. And then, so you can see things are flattening. People in today's world, your world, students, you are actually using, your iPad, your Apple Pencil, etc. And eventually, it's going to be this. The gap will be very little. So again, design, making, and using is going to be changing quite a bit. It's already changed. People are coming up with startup companies. You raise money just like Jacob did, and yet people are coming up with solutions. That's the norm right now. Very different from my time where a solution had to be there, injection molding, mold that we created, a lot of fighting, a lot of investment going up front. Well, today it's a very different world. You can create less quantity also. So that's the kind of world that we are living in right now. And in the world of sensors, there's sensors in everything. If you look at that, within even the cars you're buying, I bought a brand new car just about a month ago, and yesterday I was trying to drink coffee and drive from New York to Boston, and I decided the car had it doesn't go out of the lane. It's got some safety features, so that's all good. But I had taken my hands off the steering wheel for just a few seconds, and suddenly it said, "Put your hands back on the steering wheel." So my point being, as you see in this spark plug up here, there are sensors being built into everything. The world of sensors. So as designers, solving problems and getting into how people use it, and then looking at habits is going to be very important as well. It's not the technology anymore. Robotics. So moving on from there, the era of documentation, which was perhaps the world, my world didn't even have the computer at the time. It was all very much manual process. Actually, I was one of the first ones at NID to be bringing CAD/CAM through Tata Institute of Fundamental Research into using it for designing. That was my thesis project. Era of optimization, era of connection. This is with sensors. And now, era of collaboration. And moving even beyond this, it's the cloud collaboration. So when you look at all these trends and processes, all these things cannot happen without thinking, the brain, the buddhi. That's very important. Okay, it's not just about AI. The person is still there. So human-centered design, that's a terminology that you'll be coming across quite a bit. And I won't bore you with the actual definition because you'll be coming across it, but Stanford D School and IDEO kind of brought this to the forefront. A lot of this was already going on, but what they did was they popularized it to the point that it has become democratized. So that was one of the good things they did. There's a lot of arguments over design thinking as well. But the characteristics that can help during a social impact or human-centered project is something to remember. And that goes into you as students to be able to think about the user, the planet, think about community, use techniques of empathy when you're looking at creating solutions. Observe, listen, reflect. Reflection is very, very important. Thinking, did I do the right thing? And being able to be honest about it. Global outlook. The world has become much smaller. We can, through WhatsApp, and we are talking right now about Ahmedabad and Boston in real time. Ethics. Being an ethical citizen, designer, engineer, solution provider is probably the most important thing. And I think COVID has exhibited all that to us. It brought out the ugliness in humankind. It also brought out the best in a lot of under a lot of circumstances. A humbling lesson for all of us. Social justice for the common good, storytelling, being able to tell your story. So those are some of the things you'll be learning at your institute at UID, but that's something that you need to be learning and practicing. So I'm going to race through these because you'll probably be learning a lot about design thinking, but it's a structured group process and for creative problem solving. It is very relevant today because it kind of tells you to take into account your end user and going back to that end user to make sure that unintended consequences are fully taken into account. So is there a difference between designer and design thinker? Yes. As I mentioned, the noun and the verb right in the beginning. And it can be used for anything. It's an agnostic process. By agnostic, I mean, it's not discipline specific. It's not the domain of designers. And those designers who argue that, we were the first one, hum pehle aaye the, design thinking kar rahe the. That is baloney. Okay, it is everybody's. So, and in fact, other disciplines are probably in some ways doing a better job in adopting it than my own discipline sometimes, I see. It's process-driven, iterative, collaborative, human-centered approach to understanding complex challenges. A lot of systems thinking goes in, and you'll be learning that over the next 4 or 5 years as you're going through your journey in college. This is a good illustration of design thinking. It's done by somebody else, but design thinking takes you through a lot of confusion. So jumping to the first solution is not the way to do it. Go through this exploration process and then come up and make an informed decision in designing your thing. There are lots of great resources. This one is Vijay Kumar's book. It's one of the best sellers. I would encourage you to get a copy of this. It's on Amazon. Surya Vanka is another person who does design swarms. You may have heard of him. IDEO is another company. I've hired them to do work for us at BC. And then BC, Boston College, we hired a design firm to look at the future. And that led to this building that's coming up this fall, which is called the Schiller Institute for Integrated Science and Society. We're not calling it a design place. We're kind of bringing all these things together so that people will be able to go to this test kitchen and come up with solutions. So are these changes, again, that I talked about, are these necessary? Absolutely. They are a necessity. They're no longer something that it's an option. So we need to keep these in mind. And what do these shifts mean for us in design education? So all of the above cannot happen without thinking. So in closing, I'd like to say, we need to be designing responsibly. All of you have a very bright future in front of you. You need to look at human-centeredness, you need to look at life-centeredness. It's about the planet. We destroy this planet, we are all doomed. And it's been exhibited through COVID as well. Design for social justice, the common good, focusing on unintended consequences. That's a very important piece. And radical collaboration. That is the crux of everything. Working with different disciplines. Do not be tunnel visioned into your own discipline only, within your own discipline only. And again, 2021, we are now becoming post-pandemic. Maybe something else will come up, we don't know. But being an optimist, I'm looking at these game changers are great learning experiences as we, as learners, students, and educators go through this journey. So again, radical collaboration by design is the future of making and learning. And I'll stop here because I think I'm 44 minutes and 15 seconds. And that's so right on time, I think. So Samit, if there are any questions, you can collect those things. I'm happy to answer through you.
Yep.
Later, at any time.
You made pretty good time. We'll make sure I'm sure our students will have quite a bit of questions and they would love to have a further conversation. And we'll definitely communicate that to you. But thank you so much for making time. And it has been a really great session to start off the morning with. We had stories of experimentation, innovation, cross-disciplinary problem solving, what you said as radical collaboration. I think that is definitely the need of the hour. Systems thinking, collaborations of the future, then being human-centered. think human-centric design can also be can we be just simple human-centered people? And once that happens and that becomes an attitude, human-centric design will become second nature.
That humility is very important for all of
Absolutely.
us.
True. And there were beautiful glimpses of a fast approaching and probably even faster getting away future. So thank you so much for making the time. And it has been a really inspiring session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Samit. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everybody. Have a great, wonderful time as you go through college. Goodbye.